Hi everyone, my name is Loren and I work at the Ann Arbor District Library. Thanks for watching AADL TV and thanks for watching the third episode of Cartoon Drawing with me. Now if you like the shows that you see on AADL TV, please do click like. That helps us spread the word. Thanks. Now today, to get started, you'll need a few things to draw with me. You'll need a pencil, or several, and you'll also need some colors, whether that's colored pens and markers or colored pencils. Last but not least, you'll need several sheets of paper. Now today, we'll doodle together to get warmed up. I will guide you through a couple of cartoon draws. We'll do an inside-outside exercise, and we'll finish with writing stories for our mini comic books. Alright, let's get started with doodling. Remember that when you're doodling, there's no right way. You're sitting down to draw without any real goal in mind. You're just getting warmed up. You're warming up your brain and you're warming up your hand. So if you watched earlier episodes, I showed you a couple of tricks to get you started doodling. One is to just doodle based on patterns. You see the patterns in the corners here. And I used a pattern to draw this really beautiful monster. You can also doodle by just drawing letters from the alphabet and creating characters out of them. Now today, I'm going to build on something that we practiced last episode, which was emoji self-portraits. Here's mine. I drew myself with different emotions, and I drew myself very simply. Maybe you do that when you sit down to doodle too. You might be cursed with drawing yourself over and over. Sometimes that's entertaining and it's a good warm-up, but I have a trick today that will kind of take it to the next level. It's a card trick. So this is an ordinary pack of cards, or almost. On almost every card, there's a prompt written. This is something I call a self-portrait shuffle pack. So I take it out when I want an idea, but I don't want to know the idea. Oh, this one's blank. Let me see if I can find you one that's written. Yeah. Here's a prompt. It's writing an insect. So if I were to pull this out of the card pack, that's it. I would have to go. I would have to draw this prompt. So let me just do that. I'll draw one right now. I'll show you how this works, and then you can join in on the second, okay? So, writing an insect. Remember, I'm doodling, and I'm not thinking about this too hard. If this big sheet of paper is too much, maybe you could fold a sheet of paper in half. That's perfectly fine. And I think I'll do that for writing an insect. So, to start, I guess I'll draw myself in side profile. Just really happy, because I think I would be really happy to be writing an insect. I'll draw myself on the back of one of my favorite insects, which is a ladybug. You can take your time, or you can go really fast. I suggest you take your time when you're doodling. You don't need to take all the time in the world, but it's nice to add a little extra details. And you see that I took the time to draw a speech balloon with me going, wee, because I'm really happy to be writing this particular insect. Okay, now that you see how this works, let's do one together. And remember that if I'm going too fast, you can always pause the video, and when you're ready, you can hit play again, okay? Great. So let's do one together. I'm going to fold my sheet of paper, hamburger style. I'm going to get my cards ready, and I'm going to pull one at random. That's the same one. Okay, this one says, as a lovely fountain. So I'm going to be drawing myself, a self-portrait of myself, as a lovely fountain. Okay. Let's do that one together. Are you ready? First, get your piece of paper lined up the way you want it to. Maybe you want it oriented this way. Maybe you want it oriented this way. I think I'm going to use the vertical setup because I want my lovely fountain to be really tall. Remember, we're doodling, and there's no wrong way to draw a fountain, especially no wrong way to draw yourself as a fountain. I'll draw something, and you draw something on your own paper. Are you ready? Let's do it. Here's what I came up with. How did you do? Did you draw yourself with water spraying out of the top and little droplets of water on either side? There's no wrong way to draw yourself as a fountain, so you might have come up with something completely different. That's okay. This is a nice doodle. Now, I highly suggest you take some time, it doesn't have to be right now, but maybe later, to create your own self-portrait shuffle pack. It's a lot of fun and it's really good to get your brain juices working when you're sitting down to draw. I have some ideas here for things that you might want to include in your own self-portrait shuffle pack. Alright, that was really fun. Let's do one more together. So I'm going to randomly pick and I got being carried by an alien. Alright, so I'm going to draw myself being carried by an alien, and you are going to draw yourself being carried by an alien. Are you ready? Let's draw. Okay, this is what I came up with. I drew myself being carried by an alien, and I think I'm having a pretty good time. I'm looking forward to hanging out with this alien, so even though he's carrying me off, I'm okay with that. Maybe you drew yourself scared, maybe you drew yourself shouting help, or maybe you also drew yourself happy. Who knows? We're just doodling, and there's not really a right or wrong way to draw any of these self-portraits. I want to show you a couple of other self-portraits that I did before I turned on the camera.
Right.
I drew myself here as a Viking. I drew myself as getting blasted out of a volcano. And over there on the right, I drew myself as a museum sculpture. It's a lot of fun to put yourself in new situations, and you probably will surprise yourself with your self-portrait shuffle pack and what you draw from your ideas. Now, if you have a spare deck of cards at home with you right now, you can ask someone in your family first if you can use them to create your own self-portrait shuffle pack. If you don't have a spare deck of cards handy, you can always use scraps of paper, which I've done here. Either way works just fine. All right, do you feel warmed up? Let's draw a couple of guided cartoon draws together. So what you'll need to do to prepare is fold a sheet of paper in half again, hamburger style, and prepare it with some panels. And you see that I've drawn 2 panels here. On my left here, I drew a panel freehand without any straight edges. And over here on my right, I drew a panel with a straight edge. It could be a ruler, it could be a clear plastic triangle. If you want to go fancy, you can absolutely do that. And if you want to just draw freehand, that's fine too. Why don't you prepare 4 panels total? So 2 pieces of paper with 2 panels each on them. You can pause the video and press play again when you're ready with your 4 panels. Okay. To start, we're going to draw something toward the left of your panel. It's going to be a spiral, and I'd like you to draw it in a clockwise way. You're going to start small, and then as you draw the other circles inside your spiral, I'd like you to go big. So start small, tight, and then go big. End your spiral with a, as it kind of like at that 5 o'clock mark or 4 o'clock mark. Connect it with a short horizontal line, and you probably guessed already what we're drawing. This one's maybe a squiggly line toward the bottom, and then kind of draw 2 eyeballs at the top, and you've got yourself a nice snail here. Let's add some details. First, right now our snail is floating in space. We want to anchor him with a horizon line, and maybe you could add some rocks or pebbles on the ground to show that he's on the gravel or dirt someplace. You can also add a little bit of shadow to his shell to make him look more 3-dimensional. Let's do that. I just draw a few little wispy tick marks that are all kind of pointed in the same direction. They're pointed clockwise. You see what I've done there? That's looking nice. And then further still, sometimes I might grab another color for this part. I might add some splotches on the body of our snail. And this is also optional. You could add some more color on the snail's shell. But this is our bare bones snail. Really nice. I wanted to show you 2 snails that I drew before I turned on the camera. In this snail, you'll see I added some shadow to her shell, I added some spots to her body, and I drew a slime trail off to the left, and I off to the right drew her in a speech balloon saying, "Hey." I also have a background with some wispy clouds, and in the foreground I have some gravel and other just debris on the ground. Okay, over here on my second snail, you'll see this one's a lot more nervous. He has some sweat beads coming off him, and you see that he is saying, "Please don't eat me." Maybe he's noticing that a bird or a human is looking at him hungrily. Now in the background I've got a tree with just 1 leaf on it, and in the foreground I have some gravel and dirt and stuff again, and this snail is also leaving a slime trail. So that might be an idea you could add if you have the space, a speech balloon with your snail saying something and a slime trail. And if you aren't already in the habit of signing your work, write your name in the bottom right or left corner where you've got some space. That way you can look back at your drawing later and remember who drew it. Okay, are you ready for our second guided cartoon draw? Let's start by drawing 2 dots toward the middle of the panel, maybe middle top, and give yourself plenty of space between your dots. You've drawn them on this imaginary horizontal line. You're going to draw a top arch, followed by a bottom arch, to create an oval. Now, You'll draw a vertical line off to the left and a vertical line off to the right. That's about the same size. And you will now connect them with a bottom arch. Make sure that this line is curvy, it's not straight. All right. Now we're going to decorate this. Let's add some icing. I'm just drawing some simple bumps. Do you see how I'm doing it? Because we're decorating a cake. Maybe on top you could add some candles and you could light them. I'm making some really simple motions to draw the flames. Do you see how I did that? All right, now let's anchor our cake because right now it's just floating in space. Let's anchor it on the table and maybe put it on a plate. And let's add some more details. This is just begging to add some color, so let's do that. I'll start maybe with some color on the flames. You can take whatever color you like and decorate your cake. To make your cake look even more 3D, I recommend adding some shadow, and you can do that a couple of different places. One obvious place is to add some deep shadow on the bottom where your cake is meeting the plate. Something that looks like this. Do you see? Another good place to add shadow is on the side of a cake. It could be on the left or on the right, but if you could draw your shadow on either side or both sides. Do you see what I've done there? Okay. When I drew my cake earlier, I didn't add a lot of shadow, but I did add a lot of color, and I added a lot of little tick marks in the top to show how brightly lit the cake is. So that's another detail that you might consider adding yourself. All right, you also probably noticed that I have a couple words at the bottom of my drawing here. Happy birthday. Now right now, of course, we need to stay apart from one another, and it makes it hard to celebrate special occasions. But I know that if I received a cartoon birthday cake in the mail and it was my birthday, I'd be really happy about that. You might consider doing that for someone in your life. I want to show you another thing you can do with your new skill of drawing a birthday cake. You could start by drawing, instead of a big one, a small birthday cake toward the top of your panel. I just drew that first, and then I gradually moved down the panel and drew a progressively larger and larger cake. So I've got 4 cakes stacked up on one another for this massive birthday cake here. You might try to do the same thing with your free panel. All right, nice job on your guided cartoon drawings. If you have some panels that are left over, that's great. It doesn't need to be right now, but maybe later on you'll revisit your snail. Draw it again, draw it differently, draw it smaller, draw a couple snails in the same panel. Maybe with your cake you'll add multiple layers to your cake, or draw a different kind of icing style, or maybe someone in the background saying something totally different like, whoa, that's a big cake. The point here is if you add different details, you'll come up with a very different looking scene. So I encourage you to explore. All right, now I'd like to show you a cartooning exercise called Inside Outside. And just like it sounds, you'll be getting up, moving around, and looking around you for this. But before you get up, you'll need to prepare 2 sheets of paper. On each of your sheets of paper, you'll want to draw a really big panel. Draw a horizon line lightly with pencil, and finally label them inside and outside. Now if you have Post-its or sticky notes handy, that's great, and if you don't, that's okay. You can use the back side of your piece of paper to take notes on. You'll need a pencil, and you'll need a hard, portable surface. It could be like a clipboard or something like it. All right, now that you have all your materials and you've prepared your 2 pieces of paper, you're going to go somewhere inside where you live. It could be a room where you hardly ever go, or it could be the room that you're sitting in right now. But stand up and look around you. You're going to be searching for 6 objects that you will draw. Right now, I suggest you just look around you, take notes. You'll see in my sticky note here, I did this earlier and I found a tea kettle, a vase of flowers, a radio, among other things. So come up with your list of inside objects. All right, after you've made your inside list, you guessed it, you'll now look outside. Now you don't need to walk outside, but you can. Maybe ask someone first if you choose to go outside. But I just looked outside my backyard window and I made a list of things that I saw. 6 things, just like the 6 things that I drew inside or wrote down inside. I have made a list of 6 outside objects or things that I saw, like a squirrel, a fence, a telephone pole, and other things. I want you to take a look at my 2 lists that I came up with. I've marked the first 3 objects on each of my lists in red. Those 3 objects, 3 from the inside and 3 from the outside, are going to go into one of my drawings, one of my panels. The bottom 3 objects will combine together in the other sheet of paper. So let's take a look at what I've done. Earlier, I combined my first 3 objects for my inside drawing. Do you see what I did? I added a kettle, and my radio, and my vase of flowers, and I combined them together with a squirrel and telephone pole and fence post that I saw outside. Now, for my other big piece, you'll see I combined my other 3 objects for each of my 2 lists. The lamp, the tissue box, and the book, along with the bird feeder, the car, and the recycling bin. Now I took my time, and you probably noticed that for each of these drawings, I really added a lot of color, and I experimented with the size, too, of my objects when I drew them, or my things. So I drew that tea kettle really big, and I drew that tissue box really big, and I drew some other objects that are maybe a lot bigger, like the recycling bin, kind of small, and the telephone pole small. So you could experiment with that too. Did you see how I put the flowers on top of the fence post? Maybe of your 6 objects, you too could combine them in interesting ways. You probably also noticed that in this drawing, I overlapped some of my objects so that that lamp is hiding behind the car, which is hiding behind the tissue box in this drawing. Now, in both of my drawings, whenever I had an object with a wire that plugged into an outlet, I made sure I drew that wire. It's really fun to draw a wire snaking around either in the grass or on the carpet here on the rug. Now, I know this is a little bit of a wacky exercise. I hope that you'll have fun with it. It can take as long as half an hour to complete, so take your time and enjoy. One more thing. You have a really big panel to work in as you draw your inside-outside drawings. But sometimes, when you're making comics, your panel isn't that big, and you need to fit less information inside your panels. You also need to learn how to simplify your ideas. I'm a big fan of the professional cartoonist Ivan Brunetti. Take a look at how he drew trees in this comic. If you want more tips on how to simplify the objects that you draw, Ivan wrote a book for kids called Comics Easy as ABC. Check it out the next time you're at the library. Alright, finally today, I wanted to offer you some help on how to make a great mini comic. Last time, I showed you how to make a mini comic book out of a single sheet of computer paper. I'm going to run that highlight footage now. Alright, that was really fast, but just do a search in YouTube for how to make a mini comic or how to make a mini zine, and there are a lot of good, helpful instructional videos on how to make one if you didn't catch the last episode of Cartoon Drawing with me. All right, now that you've made your book, what are you going to put inside it? How do you start? Well, for me, I like to start with a character. Sometimes this character comes to me out of doodles that I made. In this case, my character is going to be Fred the Snail. Next, I think about the format of the story I'm going to be telling about Fred. You know that comic books come in many different sizes. Here's a huge one by Jeff Smith called Bone. Here's Calvin and Hobbes, a series of comics. And here's another one by Jordan Crane, a really simple, short, beautiful comic. For us, of course, we'll be making a mini comic. And the mini comic has 6 pages, a front cover, and a back cover. So I'm already thinking the format of my story is going to be kind of short. It can't be too long, and it can't be too detailed. Now, just because your mini comic will be short doesn't mean it needs to be boring. I drew 3 mini comics about Fred the Snail. Let's read the first one right now. See what you think. I don't know about you, but I think this mini comic could be so much better. Did you notice how it was really slow? So slow and boring at the start. It only got good at the very last panel when we learned that Fred was having a birthday. I wanted to see what was going to happen. Let's look at another attempt that I made to draw Fred in a comic book form. This looks more interesting. Fred the Snail fights crime. Let's read it now. Well, no doubt about it, this story is a lot more action-packed than the earlier story. But it's almost a little too action-packed. It's confusing at parts, and I was the one who made it. Like, why is Fred the Snail on the anthill in the first panel? Why or how did his sidekick Worm Girl manage to wrap herself around Dr. Sticky Fingers? In the panel right before it, it looks like Fred the Snail and his sidekick are getting shot at by lasers. Plus, it's hard to read. There's too much lettering, too many words on every single panel. It crowds out the pictures. And then finally, on the end, I see that Dr. Sticky Fingers manages to escape from jail. The story is to be continued. As a reader, that's not very satisfying. I want the story to end. So I think this story can be much better. This is my final Fred the Snail story. And unlike in my other 2 attempts, I took the time to plan this story out beforehand, before I started drawing. See if you think that makes a difference. So what did you think of this story? Did it have a lot of action? Yeah, it had good action. Was it confusing in parts? No, not too confusing. Did it have a satisfying ending, complete with a funny joke? Yeah, it did. If you notice that inside the story, I didn't rely on a lot of descriptive words. I just let the characters do the talking and the acting themselves for a lot of it. So on some pages, I had a few words, but on most, I didn't. I drew everything really simply. I kept things short and sweet. Now, having a plan isn't totally necessary before you make your mini comic, but it can really help. If you want to try to make a plan before you draw your story, you can take a sheet of paper, number it on the side, have some space for your title at the top, and take some time to plan it out. Here are some guidelines that might be helpful as you plan out your story. Keep it short and sweet. Show us, don't tell us. That means let the actors act. Your characters do the action instead of explaining everything in a caption. But make sure that things are clear. Also make room for your lettering. You'll want your actors to talk, and you'll want to make sure there's plenty of space for them to say what they need to say. I think the last guideline here is the most important. Make sure you're having fun. This might seem like a lot of work to come up with a plan, and it is hard work, but it'll pay off and it'll be really fun when you have a completed story. Best of all, mini comics fit great inside a regular size envelope, so you can share them very easily with your friends. Thanks for drawing with me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you have many great days of drawing ahead, and I hope to see you again soon.